Day Rangers looking for the outlaws.
Welcome back to our second segment of Inside the News. Glad to have you with us as well on all of our affiliates across the country. Ben Brunson, Frank Vernuccio, and myself, Guy Wehman. Let's start with you today, Ben, on this segment here. The growing cyber war, China, it's an all-out assault, and they want to be the leader in the world, taking over the United States. And every time they do something, they totally just screw it up, don't they?
Well,
I mean, they got this virus out there, and everything. I mean, they really are trying, and they're trying to do this. They're trying to steal more intellectual property.
Well, they've been doing that, unfortunately, quite successfully for the last 25 years or so, ever since the advent of the internet. Look, you cannot understand China unless you understand that China has a worldview in which it sees itself as the future superpower, the sole superpower. They view themselves as the hegemony. They want to supplant the United States in our current role as the leading superpower on the planet since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And China is sure that they will be the power going forward. And everything they do is geared towards that. And if you don't have that as your foundational understanding, it is difficult to correctly analyze China and its actions. And they're taking advantage of the chaos and the attention that is focused on battling this Chinese virus to exert their influence and to advance their agenda around the world. One case in point, of course, is in Hong Kong, where the Chinese, the National People's Congress have passed a law or about to pass a law that will be imposed upon Hong Kong. Now, of course, Hong Kong reverted back to ultimately Chinese control in 1999 with the deal that there would be a 50-year period of semi-autonomy in which Hong Kong could have the liberties that it was used to under British colonial rule. And the Chinese are breaking this, and they're about to pass laws. They could not get these laws passed inside Hong Kong, so they're going to impose these laws on Hong Kong. And the people in Hong Kong know that this is the end for them in terms of having free speech and any type of liberties that they have enjoyed in a semi-Western fashion for many decades now. So Hong Kong has implemented special administrative districts over the South China Sea. So they're extending their formal annexation of the South China Sea. And China ultimately will reunite Hong Kong, and ultimately, as far as they're concerned, they're going to reunite Taiwan, which they view as a wayward province. And they will do that by military force if they ever come to the conclusion that the United States will not step in. If they reach that viewpoint, they will invade Taiwan militarily because they're not getting there through the ballot box. In fact, the Taiwanese have been going in the opposite direction towards greater independence in recent elections. So this is the backdrop of what's going on, and you have to understand it to understand China.
All right, here, Frank. Let's turn to you on this China thing, because you've done some study on this as well as Ben, and China is in this for the long haul.
In the city of Shanghai, China, there is a facility that's the size of an entire city block. It is manned by men of the People's Liberation Army of China. Its sole purpose of this entire facility is to engage in cyber warfare against the United States and engage in intellectual property theft. One of the things we have to realize is that war can be fought in several ways. It can be fought with tanks and bombs and guns and planes. It can also, in the 21st century, be fought through the internet. It can be fought in cyberspace as well as outer space. That's what the Chinese are doing. The difference in mindset between China and the United States and the West as a whole is that China understands that the war has already begun. And in war, as in love, they say all things are fair. And China is engaging in a significant act of warfare against the West. We don't seem to have recognized it. The Trump administration, however, appears to be changing entirely on this, or evolving, I should say, because they always did recognize the danger from China. The Department of Defense recently released an analysis of China's foreign policy. For the first time, they are basically describing China as an enemy nation, not just an economic competitor. An economic competitor is a country that basically wants to engage in a free market environment, is not looking to cut your throat, just wants to sell things to you. China is not looking simply to sell things to us. They are, as Ben said, looking. That's where we are with this current environment. China is not there to be a competitor. It is there as an adversary, as an enemy, and all of its actions in cyberspace, in politics, in diplomacy are geared towards that end.
You know, Ben, Frank brings up good points there. And the fact of Trump actually was campaigning on this in 2016. The people of America are starting to understand. They're starting to understand our manufacturing base, bring it back here to the United States. And whether the Democrats try to fight Trump on this, there's no doubt that even if a Democrat wins, that they're going to actually have to change a little bit of their China view. Well, maybe not. They still have their own view, don't they, Ben?
I think this is one of the great wild cards of this coming election. The fact that this virus has woken up much of the West, certainly a lot of the United States, towards the threat of China, the realization, for instance, that almost all of our pharmaceuticals come out of China now. They have driven generic manufacturers out of business. Even Indian manufacturers, which are definitely low-cost manufacturers, have been driven out of business by the Chinese, so that the Chinese have virtual monopolistic control over the manufacture of pharmaceuticals. And we heard Chinese senior government officials threaten to withhold those very drugs from the United States as punishment for our attitude in questioning the Chinese on this virus. So this has woken up Americans. You know, I was in South Florida this past weekend with friends, and let's just say a lot of my friends down there are more liberal leaning than I am. And it was very eye-opening because I heard many of them recognizing something that they had not previously recognized, which is how dangerous China is as a country, and how, in fact, Trump's policies have been right when it comes to China. And that is a sea change in terms of their attitude and their willingness to admit that. And I heard that from more than one of my friends down in South Florida. So I think this is going to have a big impact on the election in November, a positive impact for Donald Trump, certainly.
I agree with you. And we've got a lot more to talk about as far as the election, and Ben brought that up. And so that's going to be our Election Trail segment coming up on segment number 3 or C on our YouTube channel. Check us out, but we've got to take a time out. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.